Okay, now that we've created all of the parts and all of the drawings, we're going to go ahead and assemble the puzzle cube into a cube. The first thing that we need to do is we've got our untitled document, and this is going to be basically a combination of each of the components. So in order to do that, we have to first title this untitled document, give it a name so that it's saved. So I'm going to click save, and then I'm going to go ahead and call this Anaya PC. So that's going to create the file that is going to end up being the assembly of everything. So I'm going to first take the red part and pull that in. And that's going to automatically put it here. Now, first off, we'll just click OK, and that way it's at the origin, but it can be moved. We don't want to move it. We want to leave it at the origin initially. So I'm going to go ahead and hit revert so it goes back. Then if I right click on the item in the browser, I can select ground, and now this is locked in place. So in Fusion, everything is connected with a joint. It's a little different than some other CAD programs where you might be used to constraints and you constrain different faces and you add 3 constraints per connection. In this case with Fusion, most of them can be done with one instance of the joint. So in this case, let's go ahead and let's grab the blue part, pull that in. You'll notice it goes to the same origin area, but then I'm going to go ahead and use the arrows to drag it and manipulate it so that it is in the orientation that I want for actually interfacing with the red block. And each time I'll go ahead and look at the, as I spin it, look at the degrees, that can help me kind of figure out where to put it. And then now it's oriented in the right, facing the right way for how I want to connect it to the block. And then I'll click OK. So now for the joint, I'm going to go ahead and click assemble and then choose joint. The other option is to pick J. And in this case, we're going to go ahead and we're going to join using a rigid joint. So if we look under motion right here, this is rigid, it's selected. There are a bunch of other types of joints, but for the puzzle cube, we only, it's not moving at all, so we're going to use the rigid joint for everything. So the first thing we're going to want to do is make a joint between the blue block and the red block. So I'm going to want the bottom of this to interface with the side of the red block. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on select so that I can begin selecting a joint position to match up with the red block. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and spin underneath and grab the center of this portion of the block. So it gets that little circle. I'm going to click on that. Then it's going to let me pick my second object. In this case, I want it to be the center of the top of the red block. And I will click there. It's going to put the two together. And then I'm going to click OK. Now, if I try to move the blue block, it will no longer move. And then I can also see that there's a rigid joint icon right there. So if I go back to my home position, the next block I'm going to go ahead and do is going to be the yellow block. I'll pull that in. The yellow block needs to go back and to the left. So I'm going to go ahead and first push that backwards. Then I'm going to spin it perpendicular and then just to make it a little align better, move that over, and I'll actually bring it in a little closer to where I'm going to place it. And then click OK. So now, if I go to the home position again, I have this yellow piece that I want to have mate with the red piece or the blue piece, depending on where it's going to touch. So in this case, probably the simplest way is to match up the corners on the underside. So if I look down here, I'm going to want this corner right here to match with this corner here. And so that's what I'll go ahead and use for my joint. It's also possible to use the various faces. It just really depends on where you can get a proper joint that will match, or I guess we could also use this bottom left-hand corner. Actually, let's go ahead and do that because we can see it better. So I'll flip around to here. We're going to go ahead and hit J this time for our quick command. And as you can see, as I move towards the corner, if I start on this face, it will jump to the corner and have the joint point in the lower left-hand corner facing towards the puzzle cube. So I'm going to click on that. Then I'm going to orbit around. In this case, I hold Shift and push on the trackball. Go to the red one, go to the corner, and click. And that's going to join those. Click OK. Home position. If I try to grab this and move it, it doesn't move, so we're locked. There we go. We've got that connected, and we're going to go ahead and get our green piece now. The green piece comes in. It always comes into the origin or wherever it was built in its own drawing, but then we can move it around to figure out where to put it. So I'm going to orient it so that it matches the orientation that I want with the puzzle cube. And then move it to a position similar to where it will mate with the yellow piece. So I'll go ahead and click OK. Now hit J for joint. And now I'll spin around. I'm going to go ahead and join the top of this yellow piece to the bottom of the green. And it's interesting because the yellow piece flies up, but then when we say OK, it actually pulls the green piece down. So because the yellow piece was already locked, it will move the green piece to it. But in the animation, it always moves the second piece you click towards the first piece. I'm not sure why, but that's what it ends up looking like. So now we have the last portion. We're going to grab our orange part. We're going to drag that in. Then we want to rotate it. Position it so that it is close to matching and click OK. So now it's in the orientation we want, and we'll hit J. We're going to go ahead and we're going to mate this face to the top. We'll mate it to the top blue. But what we can see here is that there is no middle point to the blue face that matches the middle point of the top orange piece. So there's no joint center here. So it actually doesn't make sense to try to mate the center of the orange block to that position, because that face is actually an L shape, and so it doesn't quite work like that. In this case, then what I'll probably do is I can click the X here to undo that joint assignment initially. So that gets rid of it. Now I'm going to spin around to the other side. And instead, when I go to join, instead of doing the center point, I'm going to do the lower right-hand corner. Now, one other note, as we do a corner, you can actually have it line up with the different axes. So whenever you're going to do it, you always want to start on the face or the plane that you want the joint to face towards, and then move it down to the corner and click. And then I'll spin around, and we're going to start here, move to that corner, and click. Now those two line up. Click OK. And we've now done 4 joints to add 4 of the pieces and 1 ground. And the cube is all locked in place. Go back to our home position, and it kind of looks sometimes that there's, it's augmenting the lines where there are joints or where there are connections between the parts. But if we go ahead and look at a profile, you can see that it's perfectly flat all the way around, and that maintains as we spin the cube. And also maintains if we rotate vertically. All right, that's the assembly. Have a great day.